Hello and welcome back to the Backbone Zone. My name's Tyson, and if you're joining me, thank you very much. I know that it's been a month or so since the last podcast, but I did take a little break, but I'm back with what I'm now thinking is season 2. And I have a bunch of other podcasts sort of lined up or already done. So I appreciate you waiting, and I'm really excited to kick it back off. And I appreciate you all listening. And I have been getting DMs just saying that love the podcast and when is it coming back. So it's back. I'm actually got a pretty interesting topic, I think, today that I'll get into in a minute. But the topic of today is going to be, is there room for suspension in BMX? Which is, I think, going to be an interesting topic to talk about. But before I start, I actually just wanted to kind of get through a bit of news. For those that are watching, you might recognize, or maybe you're like, oh, this isn't, he's not podcasting in the shop at Backbone. And you're exactly right, because I'm in Braybrook, which is where Rampfest Indoor Skate Park is. I just finished riding last night. So it's Sunday morning right now. Last night was the Mid School BMX Jam. So it was sick. There was like 50 riders, maybe more. And it was 35 years plus riders. And man, there was some sick mid-school bikes. There was dudes on Hoffman Condors and race bikes. And then there was, like that era of dudes running like T1s and things like that. So it was crazy. Dudes were riding epic. It was actually a bit of a trip out, because for me, I've been growing up in country Victoria, and I would often come to Melbourne. I would see these guys at skate parks and fully like sweat them. Like, I thought they were the sickest riders. And then it was actually a bit of a trip out to see them almost 20 years later as an adult, and be able to go up to a few of them and just, oh, you inspired me back when I was younger. So it was really, really cool to do that and be a part of it. And man, there was some of the best riding I've ever seen last night. So yeah, regardless of age, like, dudes were absolutely killing it. So I'll be putting up a photo gallery on the Backbone website over the next couple of days once I get home. So be on the lookout for that. The other piece of news that I wanted to get to just quickly is the ACT Jam is official date. It's November 10 to 12. And I haven't released locations or anything like that, but make sure that you plan your trip to Canberra now. It's going to be sick. The biggest thing about ACT Jam this year is we're actually doing the video contest as well. Just as an extra thing, I love the feeling of a video premiere. It's like the sickest, in my opinion. When we did the Backbone video back in 2015 and premiered it at ACT Jam, it was probably one of the highlights of my riding, lifetime. And nothing beats the feeling of a video premiere. It's a crazy feeling. So I want to be able to have that for other riders. So go on the Backbone website now, check out the flyer and the details. Basically, you just have to have a video in by a date in September, and then we'll go through and basically judge. Well, not just myself. I'm going to get like a team of judges together to watch the videos, so it's more impartial. And then we'll have the top 10 videos premiering at ACT Jam, and then the final part the last part will obviously be the winner, and that will be revealed on the night, and the winner will win $3,000 to share with the filmer and the rider or riders, because you can be 1 to 6 riders. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about seeing all that go down, and hopefully, you know, we get some banging clips or banging video parts to play at ACT Jam, and the big thing is that a lot of riders come to ACT Jam. Some of them are the best riders in the world, some of them you've never heard of, but I want to be able to showcase their riding, regardless of whether they ride during the weekend or not. But yeah, go check that out on backbonebmx.com. Look at all the details, start filming. I think you got 5 months to do it, so it's going to be pretty exciting. So back to the topic. So the topic of today is, is there space for suspension in BMX? Is there room? And I want to give a really quick backstory to this. So I guess where I see my own opinion on this at the moment, and it kind of comes down to, well, the very short answer is yes, I think there is room for suspension in BMX. And obviously there has been some people who are paving the way with that, the Fingers Crossed crew, for example. And I'll get into that a little bit more if you don't know what Fingers Crossed is. I'll be explaining it in a second. But last night at the Mid School BMX Jam, the perfect example. So I'm riding my bike, which is a modern BMX, obviously the We the People Chaos Machine. But there were dudes there on Hoffman Condors, and there were dudes there on race bikes, and then there were crew there on like fully mid-school T1s with 44 teeth sprockets and big motorcycle chains, and but everyone that was there was riding BMX, and that was BMX to them because there's no rules to BMX. BMX is freestyle. That's what BMX is. It's freestyle BMX. You can have your own style. You're completely free to do whatever you want. There's no one telling you how you should ride. There's no one telling you what tricks you should do. BMX is like whatever you want it to be. And in that way, I think that it kind of sums up why suspension, why there's room for suspension in BMX, if you think of it like that. But if you bear with me and listen to a little bit more, I will kind of explain where I'm at with this idea because of my own experience. So lately, we've been having some dramas with the trails, and trails getting dozed and whatever. So we have been not riding trails as much as normal, and I love riding other stuff, but just lately a few of my friends have been hurt or have got kids that also ride mountain bikes. So yeah, my friends that are injured, that they're riding mountain bikes at the moment too, just because it's a little bit easier on them before they get back on their BMX. Excuse me, sorry. And I was like, oh, far out. Well, I own this big We the People BMX called We the People Avenger, and it's just basically got 27.5-inch wheels, and it's still BMX. Like, it's got like BMX handlebars and whatever. And I was like, oh, I'll come out with them to these mountain bike tracks and just see if I can ride them. And I sure enough could. It was sick. But there was some, roots and ruts and things like that I felt like I needed to figure out how to navigate easier. Basically to make it more fun. because I could jump stuff and go around berms and things like that, but some of it was a little bit sketchy. So I looked up like a cheap fork that was a suspension fork that would fit in this bike, and I was like, screw it, I'm just going to chuck on in this suspension fork. Like, why wouldn't I? And I chucked these forks in, and then ended up going riding with Mikey Ross and Caroline Buchanan. So I was definitely following some world-class mountain bike riders down another trail at a bike park. And it worked a treat. I was able to ride the jumps and the berms and whatever like I was before on the rigid bike, but then all of a sudden I was getting over roots and whatever. And I ended up even taking it to like a downhill course, like the national downhill course. I was able to ride it on that too. And it made me think, like, man, there's so much to ride in BMX, but somewhere along the line, BMX has become a little bit more like, oh, you can only do this certain thing. And, like we only ride skate parks or very smooth trails. Like the trails have to be very, very groomed. Or street, things like that. But, BMX has the ability to instantly triple the amount of terrain that they ride simply by having a bike that would be capable of doing that. And it's funny, I've been listening to a lot of I always listen to podcasts, but I hadn't listened to it until just recently. The podcast with Remy Morton. It's a Gypsy Tales podcast, and Remy is one of my mates. He supports the shop, and he's just a full-blown mad dog, like one of the best dudes you'll ever meet type thing. And he's like a professional mountain bike rider, but he's also rides BMX. And he's saying in this podcast that he doesn't want to be a professional downhill rider or a professional anything. He just wants to be a bike rider. And I think that really struck a chord with me, because I was like, man, he's so right. Like, what even constitutes a BMX? Like, is it the shape of the frame? Is it the fact that we've got like a crossbar welded onto the handlebars? Is it the size of the wheels? It's BMX can very easily go back to being freestyle and being like truly freestyle and being whatever you want, and get so much more from riding, and potentially so much more life out of riding than ever before. I guess I've been riding for 25 years, maybe more. And when you first start riding, no one really tells you anything of how to ride. You kind of like, let's say, riding through sand, or you like riding little bumps and you're doing whatever. You like just seeing what your bike can do. You're just sort of testing the limits of your bike. But somewhere along the way, you kind of fall into the idea of like, oh, I ride skate parks, or I ride trails, or I ride street. Whereas now I've kind of had this veil lifted off my eyes where I'm like, oh, no way, I can actually ride my BMX at a mountain bike park. And even, what is a mountain bike park? Like, is it a mountain bike park, or is it just like jumps down a hill, or is it just berms down a hill, or is it just single track through a creek and things like that? I obviously over the last few years fingers crossed has been something that has emerged. So the fingers crossed, I think it started off as a bit of a crew of some very legendary bike riders. So Ruben Alcantara and Garrett Burns and a few other riders, predominantly in Spain, basically built a 20-inch BMX with dual suspension just to sort of test the limits of what could be done. And at the time, it kind of received it definitely got a lot of people noticing what they were doing, and it had some reviews, good or bad. But regardless, they went on and continued to do it. And I'll admit, even at the time, I was like, nah, I don't know about that. That seems like a bit weird. But now I understand, Ruben. Thank you for persevering. So yeah, they've been doing that, and it's been really interesting to see that progression, because since then I've even seen people just running just a front suspension fork on a BMX and then riding jumps, but then also riding skate parks and things like that. So there's definitely scope to have suspension come into BMX if obviously people are already doing it. Now We the People's coming out with this 20-inch suspension bike. I think there's almost like a deeper question that runs through this, and it's not even really, it is to do with suspension, but it's not as if suspension is the only thing that is a sticking point, in BMX. BMX essentially could do whatever they wanted, just like back in the day, with, let's just say, Joe Kidd on a Stingray. Dudes were riding cruiser bikes, like just Schwinn Stingrays, which I guess was just like your basic bike, and then modifying it, and that's what BMX was like. So they weren't riding like a BMX, but they were, because it was like in their heart. BMX is almost more of a feeling, more of a mindset than it is like the particular type of bike that you're riding. And even I guess in a way, Remy Morton really illuminates that with his riding. He's kind of like riding BMX, but on this like downhill bike that's got no chain, and it's got short cranks and things like that. So it's a huge eye-opener for me to see that I, after all these years of riding, now have somewhere new to take BMX, and to continuously be opening myself up to new experiences. Imagine if you just never changed your perception on a topic, on a thing. You've just, like, let's just say, if you use the example of food, right? So if you ate the same food that you ate when you were 10 years old and you never tried anything new, then how do you know how good food can get if the only thing that you like eating is, like, I don't know, cereal and whatever, like something basic that kids eat, hot chips or something. Whereas there's so much food to be had, and just like in that same sort of idea, there is so much you can ride with BMX. Like, why would you shut yourself off to the idea of riding different stuff and potentially having a great time if you're stuck in this idea of how a BMX should be? For example, obviously technology moves pretty fast in cycling. BMX kind of hasn't done that. I think even with my bike, for example, like my Chaos Machine frame is the first frame first production freestyle frame to have a disc mount, and it was met with a lot of like negative and a lot of positive feedback. But I'm glad to have done it because that's something that I wanted, and to me that's what freestyle BMX is. It's doing whatever you want to do. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes from an industry standpoint. I'm not someone who creates bikes, but I do think that there is scope for, I can see having like the dual suspension 20-inch bike, like what the Fingers Crossed crew ride, and now Weird People's coming out with the Swamp Master, which was going to be great in itself, for those that want to be able to delve into the dual suspension BMX world without having to spend a lot of money getting custom made frames. But I can see in the future having things like a 22-inch wheeled bike but with a 24 suspension fork, and having like a mullet type bike that they have in mountain biking, and maybe that allows you to ride even bigger stuff, or you're still going to have like that hard rear, because you're not going to have a shock. Or maybe you're going to have bigger wheeled bikes like my We the People Avenger that I've been riding. Maybe that will become a thing where you can jump on that, and that's your BMX for being able to ride like really challenging rocky stuff. And all that stuff that I thought was, the riding through rocks and all that sort of stuff, man, that's a challenge, just like riding downstairs on a BMX, or riding trails. It's just another terrain to conquer. And man, BMX it's exciting for me. Obviously maybe I sound like I'm excited, and it's because I am. It is just, I can't believe that after 25 years, I'm like, holy crap, there is just so much stuff to ride a BMX on. You just need the right BMX. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. Obviously, this is going to ruffle a few feathers, because people probably think that there's, BMX is a certain thing to them, and that's where BMX needs to stay. And if you're one of those people, then that's totally cool. That's BMX can be anything to anyone, like I've said in the podcast before. And that's where we need to realize that let's not get stuck just thinking that BMX has to stay in one box. Let's aim up. Let's go for new ideas, and if things don't work out, well, there's always what BMX is right now, which is two wheels and jumping. So that's it for me. I'm actually just about to drive home, and I will be back on these podcasts frequently, so I appreciate you waiting on these. And just thanks for listening. As always, share it around and like us, subscribe, whatever that does. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.